So we're having an interview today with Doug, and I'll get him to introduce himself.
Yeah, my name's Doug Gordon. I'm a Wiradjuri man. I now live originally from Brewarrina. Now I live in Dubbo for the last 13 or 14 years. And my mother and family come from Angeldool. And my grandmother, she was moved from Wellington when she was 13 years old.
So what was the impact of that on your family?
Well, a couple of stories I've had when my mum and dad and their brothers and sisters were living in Angeldool. The story I got that a truck pulled up at night with a canvas around the sides and the back, and they told the family they were going to take them for a ride, just a joyride. So they all jumped on, and they shipped them all down to Brewarrina Mission. Now, they just thought they were going to go for a bit of a ride around Angeldool, that sort of stuff, and then the ride went on for quite a few hours, and they found out when they pulled the big tarps off the truck that they were just dumped at Brewarrina Mission. Didn't know anyone. There's a lot of other Aboriginal people from other different tribes that was brought there, and they were crying, and obviously they didn't know anyone. They were lost. They were taken away from their people they've known. And there was other people in Angeldool that was moved just to another part of the property, moved away from their families, and they didn't realise that their families were only a short distance away. They thought they were miles and miles away from them, and they didn't see them for years. And then when my dad died, luckily my brothers and sisters moved away. They married non-Aboriginal men. They were nice blokes, but didn't know anything about our culture and that sort of stuff. And then I just grew up with my mum. My dad died when I was 11. Before I go there, one of the main stories that sticks in my head is when my grandfather, when they were out on the mission, they had just cement floors and corrugated iron just around the walls, nothing to sleep on. So my grandfather had to go and steal a Hessian bag where the potatoes came in for my mum and brothers and sisters to cover up with, and he had to have that bag back in the master's quarters or the mission bosses before they wake up, because if it was caught missing, the rations would be taken off them. And same as the culture, the talk and everything like that, if they were threatened, if they were teaching us anything, well, their rations would be taken off them also. And then after my dad died, my brother and sisters moved away. The biggest impact I've had, when I was going to school, I'd done all right at school, but it was all a white man's way of being taught. But I always felt empty. I didn't know why I felt empty until after I left school. When I was at school, actually, you knew you was always going to be treated second class by the teachers. You were always going to get the cane where the non-Aboriginal kids would be let off. As far as the football teams go, we were a bit lucky in a lot of respects as far as sport go, because most Aboriginal people played rugby league. I only can speak about rugby league because that's what I've played. And then that was all right when I was going to school. I knew a bit about education, that sort of stuff, and times tables and how to spell and that sort of stuff. But the biggest impact for me is when I left school, and when I become a young man, I got out into society, and I was just lost. You sort of feel that you're on your own. Particularly when my brothers and sisters were moved away, and you try to fit in society. They didn't want you there, and I've always been a man back in those days, and I still do, try to break down barriers between black and white people, and I will continue to do that. And I teach my kids to do that, just to treat people how they treat you, and show respect. I always try to teach respect, no matter what the situation is. If anyone's racist to me, which I've seen over a lot of the years, that there's a problem with them. There's not a problem with me. And that's the way I look at it, and that's why I put into the minds of the kids at school now. I don't want them to go through what I went through, and what other people went through. And you want to ask a question?
So you're working in schools supporting Aboriginal kids.
I am. Yeah.
Can you tell me why you do that?
Well, actually, I work with Aboriginal, non-Aboriginal kids. I worked as a special learning support officer over at Delroy High School, and the reason why I wanted to do that because they feel like they're failures, and I felt like I was a failure when I was growing up, going to school. And I sort of, to me, they're sort of like they're the underdog. They mightn't have good role models in their families. Their health may not be very good. I can understand their parents because they probably went through the same thing as I did. I know a lot of parents get the blame, and sometimes it's justified, but a lot of the time their parents probably grown up like me, unwanted in society. And to me, that they're underdogs. The kids, I work a lot of kids with disabilities, physical disabilities, mental disabilities, and for me personally, money isn't an issue for me. I'm happy with what I am. I haven't got much, but the little bit of knowledge and kindness that I've got, if I can teach the kids to have a good heart and show respect, that's the main purpose I want to work with them.
Yeah, that's really important. I noticed that you're learning Wiradjuri language now. Why are you involved in learning Wiradjuri language?
Well, like I said earlier, when I said there's a big gap in my life, I believe language is the most important part of any culture. Like we've got any of the cultures in Australia now, like they've known their language, and they can have the identity. Where if we haven't got no language, what we got nothing. We haven't even got identity in our own country, and it's great that we can do it here at TAFE, and the teachers are fantastic. But it wouldn't have been great if we could learn that off our grandparents and our great-grandparents years ago when we were little, and that would have been our identity. Instead of being going to school, living a white man's way when we know we're Aboriginal, but we don't know anything about ourselves. The old saying that we're strangers in our own country, and that's so true. Now, it's so important for me as far as the language go. It is a little bit difficult for me, I must admit, but I go back and use those little things that I've learned at TAFE here and go and just do a little bit with the kids at school. And the sad part about it, they get a little bit shame, and I've got to try to teach them not to be shame about their culture, and try to tell them you can learn to speak two different languages, but a lot of people can't do that. And as I'm starting to get a bit older now in life, I'm just trying to find out as much as I can about my culture.
You were saying that your family got moved to Angeldool, and so you thought that that's what your nation was, where you belonged, but now you've just recently found out that your grandmother was taken from Wellington. So what's the impact on you? Because you're actually Wiradjuri, you've just discovered.
Well, actually, I wasn't living in Angeldool when Mum and Dad got moved. I was born then, but when I grew up going to school, I didn't know, even though I believe I'm from Brewarrina, I still didn't know what tribe I belonged to. So I just started, and it's embarrassing to ask people too sometimes, because I was a grown man. What tribe am I from? It's terrible, and then. So I just assumed, I'm Brewarrina, and I think Kamilaroi Nation from around that way, and the Niambar Nation, and so I just accepted that along the way, like I just adopted that for the time being, and it made me feel a bit better. And then only just before Christmas, last year, Auntie Doris Shillingsworth, I was telling her about how I was feeling, and I said I can't find history because I don't know my grandparents on my father's side. I only knew my grandmother and grandfather on my mum's side, and she said I'll try to find out a bit more because she's got a lot of knowledge too. And because I pick her up and take her to work in the mornings, and that if she's walking to work, and we just talk about different things all the time. And she said, I'll see if I can find a bit of information. And then she come back and told me that my grandmother was moved from Wellington when she was 13 years old, and now I guess I'm Wiradjuri, so that's why I want to learn the language. And before I started getting involved with Wiradjuri, that sort of stuff, of course I obviously thought I was from Bree, and then you don't want to go treading on anyone's toes, you don't want to go offending anyone, but I was that hungry to find out about at least something about my culture.
Yeah, it has a huge impact.
It does.
Not just, that impacted on your grandmother as a young girl, but then the impact has gone on to you, third generation.
It has, yeah. And then, well, we're the kind of persons, and not only my family, there's a lot of Aboriginal families who wants to share our country, but the saddest part about it, there's a lot of people that want it all, you know. And when I moved my family from out Brewarrina, when I moved to Dubbo, we bought a house in Dubbo. This is no word of a lie. Please don't say I'm imagining anything. I turned up at a new house, our furniture, at 11 o'clock at night in the South Dubbo, and the very next day the house next door went up for sale. So he's a man who feels like he's not wanted in society, and you're just trying to move to a town to better your life, and you got the house next door selling up. And within the week, the 2 houses straight across the road went up for sale. And to me, that's not a coincidence, you know. But anyway, that's their problem anyway. But I'd like to tell you the story because these things are still happening in our society, you know.
Yeah. Are there any other examples? Because remembering this is going to go to students who are doing law, education, medicine, whatever. Are there any other examples that you might want to give of where things have occurred?
As far as race?
Racism or, that have created problems?
Actually, there's a mate of mine, we were in Sydney once there, and I think it's Ashfield. I'm not too sure about Sydney, that sort of stuff. But anyway, there was about 20 or 30 cash registered there. And myself and a mate of mine, we've taken our family down there because our girl got picked for running in the state and that sort of stuff. And this is no word of a lie. And when we were getting served, the security guard come and stood right at the end of at the cash register where I was getting served. And anyway, I said to him, mate, there's 1,000 cash registers there. Why do you come and stand in front of this one? Anyway, so what I done, I said, I'll make a scene. I said, I'll try to make a bit of light and low a bit. And I said to him, mate, now, there's 1 million cash registers there. I said, why did you come and stand in the vows? And he didn't say anything. I said, because we're Aboriginal, eh? And I said, that's the type of thing we've got to put up with all our lives. We've been watched all the time. And as people might say in Australia that we're free to a certain extent, but I still feel that there's still these invisible walls around us where we've been watched all the time. And anyway, I got talking to this young man then, and we tried to explain to him, that how unfair this is, and I believe we educated him, and we shook hands, and he apologised about it, and I said, look, I just hope you learn from that experience. There was another time I went to the KFC in Dubbo. This is only the last few years. I play in a band, and I went at the Red Ochre Festival, and I had an Aboriginal flag on my shirt. And I went into this was actually Easter time. I went into to KFC, and there was quite a few people there. Now, there was Easter feast promotions on at that time, and I believe because I had the Aboriginal flag on, they had me waiting there for 40 to 50 minutes. And I remember I ordered one Easter feaster. I'll never forget it. And there was other non-Aboriginal people come in. They ordered 2, and they were getting mine straight away. And then, but there's another thing about that. there was a lot of non-Aboriginal people standing in the in KFC at the time, and they were actually embarrassed about it. And I said, I'm not going to play up. So I just went and sat at a table. Even the non-Aboriginal people come and said to me, they said, look, this is bad. They even offered to give me their meal. That's how, because they were embarrassed how I was treated, and I believe because I had the Aboriginal flag on. So I will go back up to the can again and say, excuse me, nice and polite, because I knew the people there, they were embarrassed about what's happening. And I said, look, when's my meal coming along? Oh, another 9 minutes. And this went on for 45 minutes. And when I did eventually get mine, it was the sloppiest feed. That I should have went to the manager, but this is when I first moved to Dubbo, and I sort of just wanted to get to know people. I didn't want to make a scene about anything, but the beauty about it was the non-Aboriginal people that were in the shop at the time, they were embarrassed about how I was being treated. I was polite, wasn't cheeky, I don't drink, but how they've kept me waiting there for such a long time, they were actually really, really embarrassed about it. And I believe it's because I had the Aboriginal flag on my shirt. So
Don't need that sort of treatment.
And to see the police, you get. I believe, like, I'm not whinging or whining anything like that, but there's just times you're just driving around and they just want to check things. I know they do it to a lot of other people too, but we've been watched all the time. And if I get any advice for any people who's coming out in these areas, Aboriginal, maybe this is more to the non-Aboriginal people, just try to understand that we are the first Australians. We want to share this country. There's a minority that you think that aren't doing the right thing in society, but 99.9% of the Aboriginal people are the most fantastic people, and we want to fit in. We are doing the right thing, and the saddest part about it, when we are doing the right thing, we still not want it. Where are we supposed to go? I believe that some of the parents that haven't any role models in their lives, it affects them. They might say, well, why don't you go and look for a job? But they're thinking to themselves, well, they're not going to give me a job. I can't even walk into a shopping centre without being followed around. I still get followed around, you know. And sometimes don't prejudge. Just if an Aboriginal person's got a problem, it's not a personal thing against you. It's definitely something else that's going on in their lives. And just be patient. Sometimes they might just want you to listen. Don't give them advice until you win their trust, because they're going to think that you know everything. Just sit and listen, and just try to understand them. Keep talking to them. Sometimes you might feel offended at what they say, but don't take it personal. It's not personal. It's not personal. It's just there's still a lot of ill feeling in their blood, and we want to make this a better place for our children as well. Just before I finish, like, I've suffered a lot of racism. I've seen a lot of other people suffer racism, and I'll stand up and fight for my people because I love my people. I'm a black man, I'm an Aboriginal man, very, very proud man, but I'm also a very kind man. But I'll stand up and fight for our people. If I see them getting treated badly, I'll stand up and fight for them. Just one other thing, like I said, there's a lot of things with racism, because I play in a band too, and we always suffer racism at the club and that sort of stuff. But I'll just tell you, when I first moved to Dubbo, got a job over at Dilroy, none of the staff, there wasn't any Aboriginal people in the school at that time, and the staff wouldn't communicate, we wouldn't talk, and I was there helping children with cerebral palsy, and a lot of kids with disabilities, but they just thought they knew everything, didn't want to talk, and I felt that out of place for the first week or so. This was going for a couple of years, that I actually went and had my recess and lunch in my car, just because I did not feel comfortable there. So just think about those things. This is what we still suffer with, and please help us to be strong.